The sun on the mining planet burned hot, even though the air was cold and thin. In the corner of the old cargo yard, near the broken wall, an alien woman sat on the hard ground. Her arms were wrapped around her two small children. Her name was Dolly, and she hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her skin, once soft and sky blue, was now pale and dry. Her black hair hung in dirty strands across her face. Her eyes were golden, bright, but filled with pain and fear. She looked at each person passing by, hoping someone would stop. No one did. Her daughter coughed weakly. The younger boy tried to smile, but his lips were cracked. Their clothes were torn. They had no shoes. Just a small cloth bag with a few crumbs inside. Thali leaned her head against the wall and whispered, "Just one person, please." Then footsteps. A human man in a brown jacket and dusty boots walked by. He looked like a traveler, strong, tall, with a tired face. He carried a bag and a water bottle. He paused when he saw them, just for a second. Then he started to walk away. Thali's heart dropped, but she forced herself to speak. "Wait, human. Please." The man turned. Thali stood up quickly and stumbled. Her legs were weak. She caught herself and stepped forward, her voice shaking. "My children are starving," she said. "Please, take them." The man looked confused. "Take them? What do you mean?" "Adopt them, feed them, raise them." She took a breath. "I'll do anything. I'll be your mate if that's what it takes. Just don't let them die." The man blinked. "Are you serious?" Thali nodded. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She was too tired to cry now. The boy stood and walked over to the man. He was thin, bones showing under his skin, but he still smiled. "Hi," the boy said. "I'm Leto. Want to share my biscuit?" He held out a broken piece of stale bread. The human stared at it. He slowly knelt down to the boy's level. "Where's your father?" "Dead," Leto said. "Mama tried to feed us, but she's sick. She sleeps a lot." The girl stood up next. She was shaking. "I'm Nari," she whispered. "Mama said you might help us." The man looked up at Thali. She stood silent, her hands clenched, her body trembling. She looked like she had nothing left, not even hope. He sighed and rubbed his face. "What's your name?" "Thali," she answered softly. "I don't have much," he said. "Just a small room near the station." Thali stepped forward. "That's more than we have." He looked back at the children. Their eyes were wide, scared, but also full of trust. Finally, he stood. "Come on, let's get you all some food," Thali gasped. "You mean it?" "I don't know what I'm doing," the man said. "But I can't walk away, not after seeing this." He held out his hand. Leto grabbed it quickly. Nari smiled for the first time in days. Thali followed behind, still unsure if this was a dream. As they walked, she looked up at the gray sky and whispered a silent prayer. For the first time, in a long time, she felt something strange. Hope. To be continued in part 2. No one would help her, so she took a risk. No one would help her, so she knocked on a stranger's door. The wind howled outside the old station building. It was late, and the HFY mining colony streets were empty. The human man, his name was Reed, unlocked the door to his small room and stepped inside. Behind him came Thali and her 2 children. The room was not big. Just one old bed, a table, and a heater that made clicking sounds. Still, to Thali, it felt like a palace. Leto ran to the bed and bounced once before collapsing in laughter. Nari sat quietly by the heater, holding her hands out to feel its warmth. Reed gave Thali a pack of dried food and a water bottle. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "You can sit," he said, pulling a chair for her. Thali looked at him. "Why are you helping us?" Reed shrugged. "Maybe because no one else would." She blinked, then nodded slowly. "That means more than you." No. Flashback. 2 weeks earlier. Thali stood in front of a steel gate. Behind it was a building where humans and aliens worked. She had knocked 3 times. An old man answered, his face hard. "What do you want?" "I just want a cleaning job," Thali said. "I'll work for food, just food." The man looked at her from head to toe. "You're one of them, the exiled ones." "No," she whispered, "just a widow. Please, my children haven't eaten in 2 days." He spat on the ground and shut the door in her face. Later, she tried the kitchen behind the power plant. Then the repair shop. Then the trash yard. Every door slammed shut. Back in Reed's room, Thali sat in silence as the children ate. Nari shared half her food with her mother even though she was still hungry. Reed watched quietly. He noticed Thali's back had long, faded scars, thin lines that told a cruel story. He said nothing, just handed her a small, clean towel. "You can wash your face in the sink," he said softly. Thali stood, nodded once, and walked to the corner. She didn't cry. Not yet. But she looked in the cracked mirror and didn't recognize herself. "I'm not a beggar," she whispered. "I'm just a mother." Later that night, the children were fast asleep, wrapped in blankets. Reed sat near the heater, sipping a hot drink. Thali sat across from him, hands folded. She finally asked, "Do you have family?" Reed looked down. "Had a sister. Lost her in a colony raid." "I'm sorry." He nodded. "You?" "I had a mate," she said. "Kind, strong. But after he died in the mine collapse, my clan cast me out. They said I brought bad luck." Reed frowned. "Your people threw you out for being a widow?" She nodded. "My mate's brother wanted me. When I refused, he told lies. I had no one to defend me. They believed him." There was a long silence. "You don't have to take me," Thali said suddenly. "But if you keep the children safe, that's enough." Reed looked at her. "I'm not just going to take the children," he said. "I'm not that kind of man." She looked surprised. "I'm not offering anything romantic," she said, quickly. "I know," he replied. "I'm offering shelter, for all of you. Nothing more." For the first time in days, Thali smiled. It was small but real. Outside the room, in the shadows of the alley, a cloaked figure watched the light under the door. His hands were tight on the handle of a sharp blade. "She's here," he whispered. Then he vanished into the dark. To be continued in part 3. He wanted to walk away, but their eyes stopped him. He wanted to walk away, but their eyes stopped him. Morning came slowly on the mining planet. Cold air crept through the cracks in the walls, and the heater clicked again and again, trying to stay alive. Reed was already awake. He had barely slept. Too many thoughts. Too many questions. He looked at the small figures sleeping on his bed. The 2 alien children were curled up beside each other, warm under the old blanket. The little girl's hand was still wrapped around her brother's wrist, and across the room on the floor lay Thali, thin, quiet, peaceful at last. Reed rubbed his eyes and walked outside to clear his mind, but something felt off. There were footprints in the dust near his door, big ones, fresh. They didn't belong to him, or the children. Someone had been watching. Back inside, Thali was sitting up now, her hair still messy but her eyes alert. "You're up early," she said. "So are you," Reed replied. She looked at the children and whispered, "They sleep better when they feel safe." Reed sat down near the heater. "Thali, there's something you're not telling me." Her body tensed. "What do you mean?" "There were footprints outside," he said. "Someone was watching this room." Thali went quiet. Very quiet. "Then," she whispered, "he found me." Reed leaned forward. "Who?" She looked at the children, then back at him. "My mate's brother. The one who lied. He doesn't want me alive. Or the kids." Reed's jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because if we die," she said, He gets everything. The land, the name, the power. He needs us gone. And you think he followed you here? Thali nodded. He'll try again. He always does. Reed stood up. I can't let that happen. Thali blinked. Why would you risk yourself? We're not even your family. You are now, Reed said firmly. Just then, the boy, Leto, stirred awake. His golden eyes opened slowly. He sat up and looked at Reed. Do we have to leave again? He asked. Reed walked over and placed a hand on Leto's shoulder. No, he said. No more running. That afternoon, Reed took the children to the marketplace while Thali rested. He needed supplies, food, medicine, blankets. He also needed to think he was just a mechanic, not a fighter, not a hero. So why couldn't he stop thinking about them? He looked down at Nari, who held his finger tightly, and at Leto, who proudly carried the small bag of rice Reed had bought. He tried to imagine walking away, leaving them behind, letting someone else deal with it. But then Nari looked up at him and smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a soft one, like she trusted him completely. And that was it. That smile made the decision for him. Later that night, while the children played quietly on the floor, Reed sat down beside Thali. I'm not walking away, he told her. She looked at him confused. You don't owe us anything, she said. Reed nodded. I know, but maybe I want to be owed something. Maybe I want to mean something to someone. Thali was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, You already do. But outside the building, a cloaked man stood again, closer now. His voice was low and cold. She thinks she's safe. He pulled out a small device. It beeped once, and then a red light blinked above the door. To be continued in Part 4. A deal no one else would take. A deal no one else would take. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Reed sat by the window, watching the shadows. His hand rested on the small blaster he kept hidden under the table. Not military grade, just enough to scare off a thief or a wild animal. But this wasn't about thieves. It was about a man who wanted Thali and her children erased. Inside the room, the soft hum of the heater filled the silence. Leto and Nari were fast asleep on the mattress, their little hands clutching each other. Thali sat on the floor, back against the wall, her arms wrapped around her knees. I've put you in danger, she whispered. You didn't put me in anything, Reed replied. I stepped into it myself. Thali looked up, her golden eyes filled with something Reed hadn't seen before. Guilt. I asked you to take them, she said, but I didn't tell you the whole truth. Reed waited. He's not just a bitter man. My mate's brother is a commander, a warfighter. He leads a private group, soldiers loyal to him. Reed's jaw tightened. You're saying someone trained for war is hunting you and your kids? Thali nodded. He already tried once. When I escaped our world, he sent a bounty hunter after me. That man broke my arm. I barely got away. And now he's here, Reed muttered. On this planet. Thali didn't answer, but the look in her eyes was enough. Suddenly, a soft knock on the door. Thali froze. Reed stood, quietly moved toward the door, and pulled the curtain aside just enough to peek. No one was there. But something was. A small data chip sat on the doorstep, blinking. Reed opened the door and picked it up, then slammed it shut again. Thali stared at the chip. That's his sign, his message. Reed plugged it into the wall panel. A message played, gritty, low, and full of threat. You can keep the woman, human. Just send out the kids. If you don't, I'll burn the whole building down with you in it. Reed's fingers clenched around the table edge. He wants me to give up the children, he said. Thali stood slowly, her voice shaking. He always hated them. They remind him of his brother. He wants to erase the bloodline. Reed turned to her. And you were willing to give yourself to me to save them? She nodded. Yes, I didn't care if I had to be a servant, a wife, a tool. If someone could love them, protect them, that was enough. Reed looked back at the kids. Leto was still asleep, mumbling something happy in his dream. Nari had kicked off her blanket. They didn't know their lives were being bargained for. I could walk away, Reed whispered. Pretend I never saw you. Give the kids up and be safe. Thali didn't stop him. Most people would. Reed turned around. But I'm not most people, he said. He walked to the cabinet, pulled out an old ID chip and placed it in her hand. Thali looked at it. What's this? My old off-world citizenship. If we register together, the system will see you and the kids as my legal family. Her eyes widened. You'd claim us? Yes, Reed said. But it's not a fake. Once this is in the system, you're mine. And I'm yours, all of you. Thali stared at him. Why? Why would you do this? Reed looked toward the door, then at the children again. Because they looked at me, like I was their future. And no one has ever looked at me like that. The heater clicked again. Outside, the red dot blinked on the door. A soft whisper echoed in the dark alley. He's made his choice. Then I'll make mine. To be continued in Part 5. Someone wants them dead. Someone wants them dead. The building exploded with light. Reed woke up to the sound of shattering glass and the scream of fire. The wall beside his bed cracked. Smoke poured in. The children started crying, confused and scared. Get up now, he shouted, grabbing Nari in his arms. Thali had already scooped up Leto. Her eyes burned with fear, but not surprise. She had known this would happen. They're here, she whispered. Reed kicked the door open and ran into the smoke-filled hallway. Flames crawled along the ceiling. Someone had set the place on fire. This wasn't a warning. It was an attack. Outside, they stumbled into the cold night. People shouted. Water pumps roared to life. But no one looked at Reed. No one helped. In places like this, no one wanted to get involved. Over there, Thali pointed. The maintenance tunnels. If we go deep enough, they won't follow. They ran, feet slipping on ash and ice, the children clinging tightly, behind them, in the shadows. A tall figure in black armor watched. The red lights on his shoulders blinked once. Then he turned away and disappeared into the smoke. Inside the tunnel, the air was damp and cold. Water dripped from the pipes above. They ran until their legs shook, until the sound of fire was gone. Finally, Reed stopped. He placed Nari down, gently, his chest rising and falling fast. Thali sat beside him, holding Leto close. He's not going to stop, she said. He's done waiting. Reed looked at her, his face tired but sharp. Then neither am I. A few hours later, they reached an old power station deep in the tunnels. It had been abandoned years ago, but the doors still worked. Reed locked the main gate and placed the children near a vent for warmth. Then he looked at Thali. You knew this would happen. She nodded. And still, you came to me. I had. No one else, she said. Reed pulled something from his jacket. It was the legal bond chip. If we register this tonight, your children become mine. No court can split us. And if he comes again, I'll have the law on my side. Thali looked away. But he doesn't follow the law. I don't either, Reed said, eyes burning. Not when it comes to family. At that moment, Nari coughed. A sharp, dry sound. She was running a fever. She's getting sick, Thali said, panic rising in her voice. We need medicine, Reed said. But the clinic is back near the fire zone. I'll go, Thali said. No, Reed answered. Quickly. You're the one he wants. If he sees you, he'll strike again. Thali looked at him with wet eyes. Then, you're going? Reed nodded. But it's dangerous, she whispered. I know, he said, grabbing his coat. But I made a promise to you, and I don't break promises. As he left the tunnel, Thali held her daughter close and watched him disappear into the dark. She said nothing, but inside her heart whispered something she hadn't said in years. Please come back. Meanwhile, far above the tunnels, the bounty hunter received a new message on his visor. Eliminate the human first, then the mother, no more warnings. He smiled. Understood. To be continued in Part 6. You're not just their guardian now. You're not just their guardian now. Rain fell on the ash-covered street as Reed moved carefully through the quiet colony. His coat was soaked, his steps silent. He had to get to the clinic, grab fever meds for Nari, and vanish before the hunter found him. He wasn't trained for this. He wasn't a soldier. But something had changed. He wasn't just helping anymore. He was fighting for his family now. Back in the hidden tunnel station, Thali placed a wet cloth on her daughter's forehead. Nari's skin burned with fever. Her eyes fluttered open and closed. "Mama," she whispered. "I'm here," Thali said, brushing her hair back gently. "Stay with me. Just a little longer." Beside them, Leto clung to Thali's arm. "Will the human come back?" he asked softly. Thali looked toward the tunnel entrance, her heart heavy with worry. "Yes," she said. "He promised." At the clinic, Reed pushed open the back door and slipped inside. Shelves were empty in some places, supplies stolen or sold long ago. But the fever meds were still there. He grabbed them. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Armored. Reed turned and saw the bounty hunter step into the hallway. Red lights blinked across his chest. A voice buzzed from the mask. "You're the one who said no. Now you die with them." Reed didn't wait. He ran. The hallway exploded behind him as the hunter fired. Sparks flew. Alarms blared. But Reed knew these streets. He darted into an alley, jumped over a fence, and disappeared into the dark. He didn't stop running, not for his safety, but because a sick little girl was waiting. Hours later, just before dawn, the tunnel door creaked open. Thali jumped up. And there he was. Soaked. Bleeding from his shoulder. But alive, and holding the medicine. He dropped to his knees beside Nari and opened the bottle with shaking hands. Thali helped him give her the first drops. Then, silence. Minutes passed. Nari's breathing slowed. The fever began to drop. She opened her eyes. "Papa," she whispered. Both Reed and Thali froze. Reed smiled gently. "Yeah, I'm here." The little girl reached out and touched his face with her tiny hand. "You came back." Thali sat beside him, tears in her eyes. "You risked your life." Again. Reed looked at her. "Because she's not just your daughter anymore." He reached into his coat and pulled out the registration chip. "I signed it," he said. "You and the kids, you're officially mine now. Family. On every record, every world." Thali covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I don't know how to repay you." "You already did," Reed said. "You let me matter to someone." But deep, in the colony's shadows, the hunter wasn't done. He placed a call. "They're in the tunnels. I'll need backup." A voice answered coldly. "Bring the woman and children alive. Kill the humans slowly." To be continued in Part 7. She offered him her life, but he gave her a home. She offered him her life, but he gave her a home. The old power station was quiet. Nari was sleeping peacefully now. Her fever had broken. Leto lay beside her, one arm resting protectively over his little sister. Thali stood near the broken wall, staring out into the tunnels. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something she had forgotten long ago. Hope. Behind her, Reed wrapped a fresh bandage around his shoulder. The pain didn't matter. What mattered was that the children were alive. That Thali was still breathing. That none of them were alone anymore. Thali turned slowly. Her voice was soft. "You could have left us. I know. You could have died out there." "I almost did," he said with a faint smile. She walked toward him and sat, down across from him on the cold floor. I gave myself to you, she said. Not because I loved you, but because I was desperate. Reed looked her in the eyes. I know. But now, she whispered, you've given me more than I asked for. You didn't take me as a bargain. You made me feel safe. You gave my children something I couldn't. A future. Reed lowered his head. I never had a family before, not a real one. You do now. Suddenly, the sound of metal boots in the tunnel. They both turned sharply. He was coming. The hunter. And he wasn't alone. 3 soldiers walked beside him, armed and armored. Their red lights blinked in the dark like eyes of death. Thali's heart pounded. He found us. Reed stood slowly. Then this ends tonight. He walked to the center of the room and waited, blaster in hand, but not hiding, not running, protecting. The metal door burst open. Smoke rolled in. The bounty hunter stepped forward, weapon raised. You made a mistake, human. Reed didn't flinch. So did you. Before the soldier could shoot, Thali stepped out beside Reed. No more hiding, she said. Her voice was firm. I'm not your property, I never was. The hunter growled. You're a stain on your clan's name. And yet, here I stand, alive, loved, free. He fired, but not at Thali, at Reed. The shot hit Reed's chest, knocking him backward, Thali screamed. Leto and Nari woke up crying. The hunter stepped closer, ready to finish the job. But then, Reed moved. He pulled a hidden charge from his coat and threw it under the soldier's feet. Boom! The blast shook the tunnel. Dust and fire flew everywhere. The soldiers fell back. The hunter dropped his weapon, and Reed stood again, bloody, coughing. But, alive. You forget, he said, walking forward. I'm not just a man. I'm a human. And we protect what's ours. By the time the dust settled, the bounty hunter and his men were gone, dragged off by security, alerted by the blast and the registry signal Reed had activated. Thali rushed to Reed and wrapped her arms around him. You're insane, she whispered. But I'm yours, he whispered back. 1 week later, they moved into a small house on the edge of the colony. It wasn't big, but it was warm and quiet and safe. Nari ran around barefoot in the garden. Leto helped Reed fix a broken light on the porch. Thali watched them all from the doorway. She had offered her life to a stranger, but he had given her more than safety. He gave her a home,